and schools have worked together since the beginning of formalized schooling. But just how important is the role of parenting on the educational achievement of their children? Welcome to another episode of Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom. With me in studio is educational psychologist Mrs. Shamilia Dawkins-Brown. And today we discuss the role of parenting and its contribution to educational development. Mrs. Brown, first of all, what is parenting?
It's a very interesting question. Parenting basically focuses on the promotion and support of a child from childhood to adulthood. It looks at the social, the emotional, the psychological, and the intellectual development.
All right, and how does the knowledge of parenting affect child rearing?
Knowledge of parenting affects child rearing because it equips parents to know exactly how they are going to deal with their children. This happens, for example, the brain is known as neuroplastic, all right? What does that mean? Our brains are adaptive. So our brains are adapting to circumstances and situations. How does it do this? It does this by releasing chemicals or hormones, okay? For example, there's one hormone that is called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that causes us to be calm or balanced. When parents have knowledge of preparing environments that are stress-free, that cause their children to be comfortable, the oxytocin helps them to be able to make decisions. It helps them to regulate in terms of remaining calm, remaining balanced. When the parents prepare environments that are stressful, they have situations where cortisol are released. Cortisol are stress hormones that causes individuals to not respond well to particular circumstances or situations. So then we have children who are very anxious. So if we help parents or equip them in order to prepare homes or environment that are conducive for the development of children, then we at this point are helping parents to prepare better homes. How are these hormones important for the development of children? With the oxytocin, we are preparing them for executive decision making because when the brain is at peace or at rest, they are able to regulate better, calm down their own selves within stressful situations, or just for executive functions like understanding better in school, because if you are relaxed, you are better able to learn. If you are relaxed, you are better able to recall and to understand information in opposed to being stressful.
Well, that certainly explains a lot. That's why we have, certain rules, I guess, not having children work. That would impact the educational situation, not having children make such serious decisions and stuff like that. Say I'm a person who is thinking about becoming a parent. You're a mommy. Where can I go to get such information? How do I educate myself about parenting?
The schools is one of the key environs that are now being used to equip parents. We have in schools parenting workshops, parenting seminars, teaching and equipping persons according to the varying skills or the varying parenting styles that will better help parents to deal with the daily emotional and psychological and mental needs of their children. Also, there's a National Parenting Commission that is doing work with parents. And you have varying organizations that are also offering support for parents, parenting workshops within inner city communities that are helping them with the varying parenting styles and also helping parents to regulate their own emotional and psychological needs. Because a parent who is well balanced emotionally or psychologically is better able to assist their child.
And speaking about different ways of preparing, I'm sure there are varying styles of parenting. Speak to me about that.
Yes, there are. All right, there are varying styles of parenting. I'd like to speak with you about maybe about 4 of them right now in the interest of time. We'll start with the authoritative parenting style, and this one is known as the preferred parenting style. This is a style where the parent has perfect balance of control and responsiveness. What do I mean by control? The parent automatically is the person who is responsible, like I said before, for the upbringing of the child. And this can be emotional, psychological, and intellectual. All right? If the parent has proper control in terms of how to regulate the child, how to help the child to make decisions, then that parent is raising a balanced human being. The authoritative parenting style takes place when parents are able to not just want to remain or be in total control, but they also give the child some amount of control. How do they do this? They do this by allowing children to make decisions for themselves. They do this by encouraging children to be critical thinkers, because if we have critical thinkers, then we have a better control of our society. These parents also incorporate this particular parenting style by just paying attention to the emotional needs of children. So it's not a situation where it's my way or the highway like the authoritative parenting style, but they take into consideration the needs of the children, and there's a negotiation going on. In instances where there can be no negotiation, of course the parent has to stand his or her ground and let the child know ultimately who is in charge. But there's the fostering of thinking of the child's cognitive development as well as their intellectual and emotional state. And this is something that I firmly believe has to be taught. It's not something that you just wake up and you walk right into it just like that. There is the authoritative parenting style. And I think in our Jamaican setting, this is something that we are so accustomed to. Most of us would have heard, do as I say, automatically when our parents give us an instruction, without explaining to us the reasons behind the instructions. Or they will say, children must be seen and not heard. So a lot of us, especially persons who are from the country, would have heard that a lot. Be seen, not heard, do as I say, no questions. There's no regard for how you are feeling, or the child is feeling, about that particular instance, or how the child is feeling within the circumstances, the situations, or the boundaries that are being set for that particular child. And so with the authoritative parenting style, the parents are usually strict disciplinarians. Yes, they do mean well for the child, but sometimes it doesn't always work out for the best interest of the child, because other psychological and emotional factors are not being taken into consideration. The other parenting style that I would like to speak on is the permissive parenting style. And this usually comes with parents who are trying to be friends with their children. And you can be a little friendly, but it can't be like a bosom sort of friend situation going on. All right? The permissive parent does not focus on punishment nor discipline. So they allow a lot of things to happen. They are responsive, though, to their emotional state of the child, but they do not take into consideration discipline. They do not take into consideration curbing the child's behavior. And the final is the uninvolved parent. Uninvolved parents, that parenting style is usually practiced based on varying circumstances. For example, a single parent mother who really has no time for her child, that person can easily fall within the uninvolved category, leaving that child at risk. How can that person fall into the uninvolved category? That person can be out working 2 jobs because it's a single parent home. And in Jamaican terms, we have to cause ends to meet. You understand? So at that point, that person wouldn't have time for the intellectual development of the child, because he wouldn't have time to go to a school to find out exactly what is being done. How is my child being impacted by the school community? That parent wouldn't be there to find out what's happening when the child comes home from school. So in a lot of instances, the uninvolved parent has no idea where the child is. The uninvolved parent has no idea what's happening with the child on a daily basis. Parents can also become uninvolved, based on my experience with parents, because of mental issues, or sometimes they're just on drugs. You understand? And as a result of those components, it falls short where their parenting is concerned and they become uninvolved. Several factors, several reasons can cause this.
How can that affect the development of the child?
It affects the development of children in a lot of ways. Let us revert to the first parenting style that I made mention of, the authoritative parenting style, which is the preferred one. When we look at the authoritative parenting style, that parenting style seeks to create balance or wholeness. All right? Those children, because parents are taking into consideration their critical thinking skills, because they get a chance to make decisions pertaining to themselves. They get opportunity to think and actually analyze within situations. The parents are creating balanced atmospheres where the oxytocin, like I mentioned earlier, is being freely released. What's happening when oxytocin is freely released? Regulation is taking place, proper regulation. So within that atmosphere, you have balanced individuals. How does that affect them in adulthood? Those are the ones who are able to go to a job and to make proper decisions. Those are the ones who are able to go to a job and they can go through and deal with the varying emotions and the stress that comes through from work.
Quickly, I'm being told we're going to go to a break, but before we go though, I want you to skip along to that last one, the one where the parent is free-handed, that parent that does not take the time to get involved in their students, in their children's lives. How does that affect the child when the child does not have a constant parenting figure?
When this child does not have a constant parenting figure, what it does is it shows up again in adolescence or in adulthood where they are unable to make decisions for themselves. They are usually persons who are very anxious, persons who will go to in an unknown situation. Instead of self-regulating and trying to find ways and means of dealing with the situation that they're in, they will what we would call crumble and fall, just not being able to cope. So we do have persons like that who are heavily stressed out and they are affected by depression and other negative emotional reactions.
All right. We go for a short break, but when we return, we'll look at how parenting impacts educational outcomes. And joining the discussion will be educational specialist Christine Phillips Campbell. Back in a few.
Our slogan says we are the people's station, and for more than 10 years, PBCJ has been providing unique content to this growing market. Let us show you how we can serve you. We are small compared to our competitors, but it's our size that gives us the ability to dedicate ourselves to our clients. We move your project from concept to completion, keeping our activities in-house so we can make decisions in a timely and efficient manner. We have a creative, energetic, and youthful team ready to take your ideas to the next level. So what can we do for you? PBCJ has mastered the art of feature presentations, studio interviews, and PSAs. We also stand ready to create content for your social media platforms and make your message accessible anywhere, anytime. We also provide streaming for your conferences, seminars, and workshops. And guess what? You don't have to break the bank because our fees are some of the most competitive in the market. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we air it free. You heard right. We air it free for you. So call the PBCJ at 876-754-7225 or email us at production@pbcjamaica.org. We are waiting to serve you.
Thanks for staying with us on Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom. In this segment, we explore the topic of parenting and children's educational development. Our guests are educational psychologist, Mrs. Shamilia Dawkins-Brown, and educational specialist, Mrs. Christine Phillips Campbell. Miss Campbell, welcome to the set.
Thank you for having me.
All right, first of all, how does parenting affect academic readiness?
Well,
with parenting, it comes with collaboration. And if we don't have collaboration, then we'll have issues. One. Pardon?
No, I'm saying that's right. I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. So, as it relates, parents are the foundation for education sector, as from 0 to 5 years old. So when we don't have that ground foundation, we have issues academically. And when they reach in the academic setting, which is a new culture for them, we have issues in dealing with those academic issues.
Right.
Let's get
with dealing with their adaptation.
Yes.
Adaptation. What are some of the foundation that you as a parent usually put in with your kids before they get to school?
One very important foundation as it relates to the academic perspective is exposing them to print.
Right, print-rich environment.
Print-rich environments. So when they are exposed to the print-rich environment, it enhances their literacy skills.
Correct.
So children are better able to adapt to the learning process, the teaching and learning process. That's when the teacher comes into the classroom and is actually delivering a lesson. They are accustomed to the words, they are accustomed to language development, they are accustomed to sounds, and as a result of that, they are better able to fit in and to proceed.
Associate.
So when you guys talk about print, you're talking about words and
numbers, sounds, association of words and numbers, association of volumes as it relates to numbers with objects, numbers with...
Okay, so you can start with them.
At
what age do you start with them as a parent?
At 0?
As early as you can, because language development takes place from infancy. So at this point, we're speaking to them. So you are not using the Google Gaga, you're using adult words to speak to your children. So at this point, you are facilitating language development. All
right, back to Ms. Campbell now. How can you use academic performance? How does that affect how does that impact parent and school collaboration? How do you tie in all of that? Academic performance, the parent and the school. How do we tie in all of that?
So with academic performance, it requires data-driven analysis, where teachers will sit down and look at the holistic approach as it relates to grades, their behavior, that's why we have the psychologists, and their performance overall. When we see an issue as it relates to their behavior on a holistic range, we call in parents and have a sit down with the parents, and we can have a dialogue with the parents as it relates to how we can best drive, get them ready and get them comfortable in the education system.
All right, I know there's probably a lot of behaviors, but what can parents look out for in terms of behavior of their students to say, okay, I need the school to step in because I'm not seeing my child developing the way my child should develop, and I'm exhibiting the parent style. What's happening? What are some of the behaviors?
It's basically visiting, first of all, the classroom teacher for that particular child. Find out how it is that the child is adapting to the classroom environment, because you have children who will adapt for different reasons and on different paradigms. If a child is at home as a single child, that child going to school may not know how to socially regulate. So that child may not be accustomed to sharing. That child may not be accustomed to handling conflicts. And when we say child, we're meaning we're starting from the preschooler level to the high school level. So those persons may not properly know how to socialize. And so what the parenting can do with assistance from the teacher is to learn different techniques of getting their children fully integrated within the classroom setting.
And Ms. Campbell, what are some of those techniques?
In terms of parenting, you have different parenting styles. And the technique requires that, yes, you are in a single parent family, but then you need to teach them how to be team players, team workers. So we are going to say, all right, remember, this is not your space anymore. We're asking you to
shared space.
So we're going to ask you, remember, take turns. Be a helper if you can. So the techniques might be simple, not hard, but it's how you relate and socialize with others.
Okay, so as a parent, I would probably come up with a scenario where my child has to share with me or do something as a team.
Exactly.
He and I or she and I
together. And invite his friends over to try to implement those.
Also, play dates are important.
Correctly.
Exactly, exactly. As it pertains to education, there are some students who can be termed at risk. Could you explain what this means, Mrs. Campbell?
At risk are students who have been performing ridiculously down their grade level, where they are not performing academically, behavior-wise, they are having issues, and they are deemed failures.
Oh, and how can parents be supported by the school system to assist these students?
Okay, parents. If the teacher calls the parents in and they are realizing that there's a reading issue or a math issue, then they can provide the service necessary for those areas.
When a child is at risk, right? What are some of the results that come about because they're at risk? I mean, if you see a child behaving differently in class, what can that result in? Can that go further?
In terms of seeking counseling?
In terms of what would they be doing? I mean, you can say a child is at risk because their grades are low, but what other impact can it have on the child's life? How serious is this on the child when they're exhibiting this behavior? Mrs. Brown?
When we look at risk, we have to look at it from a holistic perspective, like my colleague was trying to say a while ago, where she actually mentioned behavior and education and grades. Children who are at risk, like my colleague said, are children who are at a probable cause for failure or for dropping out of school. This failure or dropping out of school can take place in terms of their family environs, their community, or the general school population within itself. Because if you have a lot of children who are at a particular school from the inner city, then those children are coming in with the norms, the cultural norms or societal norms that are being practiced by them on a regular basis. These norms can be instances of poverty, instances of no parent involvement, instances, right, or instances of their parents not being educated. And when we have parents who are not educated, then they are not able to prepare adequately their children for the educational environment, and this also puts them at risk. So at risk is therefore a holistic thing. We also have persons with learning disabilities who might be at risk for varying reasons.
Instructional level, like if they're having problems with adapting to the instructions delivered. Because students with learning difficulties, varying in terms of how you deliver information. So they might have issues receiving information, issues processing information, issues with how the information is delivered. So we need to address all those issues so that we can call them at risk.
And right now, or in our school system, you're saying teachers are trained to identify.
They're
exposed
to training to identify these issues within our students.
Teachers are exposed. Schools are now implementing APS coaches.
Correct.
Schools are now implementing educational psychologists and interventions to deal with students who are at risk. So persons know how to identify them, and not only to identify, but to prepare preventative and reactive services for students who are at risk.
Tell me something, in terms of, we're talking about collaboration here, getting the parents to play their part, not just to send the students to school. What can I as a parent do, for example, if I realize, or if the teacher calls me in and say, your child is slow, as in your child is not really picking up and following what the class is doing. What can I do at home, Mrs. Campbell, to help further my child's academic development?
First, the teacher needs to realize if the parent is competent to help with the situation.
Good point.
Because if the parent is at below the level in terms of education, he's unable to deliver. So that teacher will provide strategies to help in homework instructions. So she will give homework, but in a small quantity, as it relates to how the instructions should be carried out. Because we tend to send homework and think that hey, everybody can. But you're going to provide a structured work task for that parent so that she can help and feel competent in carrying out the task. Secondly, you have to have a close dialogue with the parent, like a conversation, daily routine, like you go to the house once a week and try to educate that parent as well, because some parents need education and we're not looking at that factor. Parents really need education, and when you find out that they're at the low stage in the education system, you're going to have problems with the students at that level as well.
It's something I have contemplated, because with the new programs being implemented, especially in basic and primary education, in helping children to matriculate into secondary and tertiary, some of those subject levels can be, would I say, challenging to the student. And so parents are now getting involved in terms of getting involved in homework and projects. They have more subjects. So it is interesting, you note, that the teachers need to get even more involved in getting the parents themselves prepared to deal with those educational challenges. Do you suppose, though, that other institutions within the community could get involved in terms like, I don't know, churches, clubs and stuff, as a Jamaican? As a specialist, have you thought about that angle?
Yes, I think that we can do more in terms of a community structure, because communities really raise children. Right. So we need to get community involved, as in calling and have sessions on Fridays and in the afternoons, church sessions. We can teach parents as well at the church level. We can also ask business persons to volunteer to assist in areas as it relates to health, as it relates to finance, to help groom and be a holistic.
Exactly. Mrs. Brown, your input, you're already a parent. Both of your children are still at the lower end of the educational strata, their basic and primary level. As a parent, what have you fantasized in terms of additional support that you could get as a parent, as a Jamaican, from the education sector, the schools themselves?
Okay. In terms of, you're speaking from the elementary level?
Yes, from the elementary level.
From the elementary level, there usually is a lot of support from parents on the whole. I would like to say that. At the primary level, there is usually a lot of support from parents on the whole. Where the support from parents does not come in as much is at the secondary level. So, because it is that a lot of parents at this point are not understanding the syllabus.
Okay.
So
or things that they're at the level. The students should be at the level too.
The students are at the level, as my colleague is saying,
how can we help the parents
to manage on their own. We can help the parents by actually reaching out to them. So my colleague did mention home visits, did mention calling them in for discussions, calling them in for conversations, calling them in to give them an understanding of where their child is at and the necessary steps that are needed to get the child to the level that that particular child needs to be. So at the elementary level now, there are a lot of parental supports. You have parents who come in, parents assist with homework because the work at that level is manageable, helping to solve conflicts, helping to solve varying circumstances or situations that may affect the child at that particular level are usually more manageable for parents. So it usually isn't a problem at that stage.
But one of the reasons I think we should address is having a whole open school policy, where parents can come in the school and watch their children teach at the secondary level. They watch them learn, so that when they are home, they can say, all right, this is how teacher says we should do it. So when we're having an open school environment where parents can walk in, observe students working, having dialogue, helping with lunch, helping students to sit down as peers and have a discussion, they will be able to feel comfortable within themselves to say, all right, mommy is supporting me emotionally, physically, and academically.
Wow, well, that's a good note to end. Thank you so much, Mrs. Phillips Campbell and Mrs. Dawkins Brown, for coming in to sit with us on Morning Coffee Guest. the strategies parents employ in socializing their children, and the effect of those strategies on children's developmental outcomes play a key role in the educational achievement of their children. This has been Morning Coffee Guest. I'm Simone Absalom. Thanks so much for watching.